Police and crime procedural dramas are, as a rule, extremely formulaic. Whether it's The Mentalist, NCIS, White Collar, Castle, or Elementary, these shows about the cops and the FBI with their lone wolf criminal expert or A-team of specialists are very, very similar. To be fair, I'm not saying that that entire list of shows is awful, or that because I'm grouping them together that they're all exactly similar in quality, but what I am saying is that these shows occupy a genre that is absolutely flooded with material, and different variations of the same characters, the same setting, and oftentimes the same plots and crimes. Of course, not being original isn't the same as being bad. Many of my favorite movies are not very original at all, and I still find them very entertaining. But when you're dealing with television, at a certain point, dozens of episodes of essentially the same protagonist or teams of protagonists taking down the same dozen types of killers gets really old really fast. All of the shows I mentioned before have engaging and watchable pilot episodes that hooked me in as I watched and made me interested in the world the characters were a part of, but very quickly I grew bored and uninterested at the repetitive series structure, and ended up stopping watching or skipping episodes to get to the conclusion of the arc for that season. So what's the solution for this? One route to go is to make your seasons shorter, essentially to make your show more like a movie with quicker and more concise seasonal plots. If you look at a show like Sherlock with its economic dialogue, 3 episodes per season, and hour-and-a-half episode length, it's easy to see that the show is in some ways more like a film series than a TV season. And that's fine, but if you're looking for a solution to making American network-length TV episodes and seasons less boring, Sherlock can't really help you, as good as it is. The standard is around 20 episodes a season for crime procedurals, and that's unlikely to change anytime soon. Given that, the question becomes, are there shows that can easily keep you engaged enough episode by episode to keep watching throughout the whole series? Yes, there are. And today I'm going to tell you why the 2008 to 2012 series Leverage is the best one there is. So what is Leverage about? The quickest way to describe Leverage is that it's a contemporary Robin Hood type story where criminals right the wrongs that normal societal channels, for whatever reason, simply can't. The longer way to describe the show is that it's the story of Nathan Ford, who used to be an accomplished insurance fraud investigator and criminal expert, but who left the business after his company he worked for denied Ford's son the money needed to save his son's life. The series revolves around his journey personally and morally as he debates with himself whether he can still consider himself an honest man if he's a thief. And his role as an honest man is important because it unifies the Leverage team. Although Nathan Ford is pretty clearly the main protagonist of the series, he is joined by an ensemble cast of experienced criminal specialists, namely a hacker, a grifter, a hitter, and a thief. Each of these characters are extremely well fleshed out people with really engaging personalities and their own unique backstory that gets explored throughout the series. In fact, if I can sell you on just one thing about this series, I want to sell you on the fact that it has really consistent characters. As I said before, in a lot of crime shows, the only person who's really featured is the main investigator character with their godlike ability to see patterns and solve crimes. In a show like The Mentalist or Castle, I have no idea what the other cop characters on the show are called. And that's not because I don't pay attention to the stuff I'm watching. I've memorized the entire script of The Incredibles almost word for word. Rather, it's because these shows are only designed to really be about 1 or 2 people. The other characters in the show are just vehicles for exposition, or are there to make the main character look smarter. In the infamous Mr. Plinkett review of Star Wars Episode 1, there's a part where various people are asked to describe the characters of Episode 1 without referencing their physical characteristics or occupation. But they can't, because there's nothing really to those characters. But not on Leverage. On Leverage, you learn to know who these people are, what their moral code is, how they perceive themselves, how other people perceive them, and even their likes and dislikes. But let's move on to the structure of Leverage. Although conceptually the idea of criminals using their expertise to help the law or fight crime has been done before in shows like the aforementioned White Collar or something like Dexter, what puts Leverage in a sort of rare middle category is that they're not working with the government like Neil Caffrey, but they're also not working against them, giving criminals extraordinary punishments like in Dexter. The goal of the team throughout the series is to bring criminals to justice by getting them sent to jail, and not to dispense justice themselves. A running quote throughout the series is, "We're not breaking the law, we're picking up where the law leaves off." And this actually brings me to the next big difference between Leverage and the rest of the TV landscape. Compared to most other shows, very few people are murdered in this series. At the beginning of practically every episode of The Mentalist or NCIS, you get a bruised and bloodied corpse of someone who's been killed in some shocking way to get the case rolling and launch the search for the perpetrator. What rubs me the wrong way about this setup is that it starts to become ridiculous after a while. There can only be so many serial killers in one city, and the body count per week in those cities must be absurdly high. With Leverage, deaths are rare, but when they do happen, they really matter for the people affected by them. So instead of launching each episode with a murder that needs solving as the cops search for a killer, Leverage often opens with the show just straight up telling you who the perpetrator is. Instead of the journey of each episode being about the search for the criminal, the plot of each episode is finding a way to convince the cops or FBI that the criminal actually did the crime. Or if that doesn't work, just frame them for a different crime with similar jail time. The third big component that makes me love Leverage is the variety. I tried watching the first few episodes of The Mentalist before I started this script, and I could not believe how similar each of the episodes were to one another. Yeah, it took place in different locations, but it was always the same crimes committed by the same types of people for very similar reasons. On Leverage, though it certainly does repeat plenty of motifs, the place and setting of the episode matters, and there's a real effort put into not only the villain of the week, but also the characters he's affecting. On a normal crime show, the person who's most injured by the killer isn't around for us to sympathize with them because they're dead, and we can become desensitized to what happened to them. But on Leverage, the person who's being hurt is still alive and being affected, and they can still be saved with the help of Nathan Ford and his team. You actually want the case to be solved not so that you know how it was done, but so that you can know how the Leverage team stops it from happening. And the last thing that makes Leverage great is the humor. The show is funny. It's not a masterclass of police procedural satire like Angie Tribeca, which is also a great show, but for a comparatively more serious series, it's got so many great moments. Moments which are made all the better because the jokes often poke fun at the characters' personality quirks, making the humor really familiar in the best way, almost like something you could imagine saying to your friends. At the end of the day, I love Leverage because it's fun, and because just your average episode of the week is usually going to be worth watching. It might not be as well crafted as something shorter and more focused like Sherlock, but Leverage is a series that never really feels like it overstays its welcome. Rather than desperately hoping for the conclusion of the season so something interesting finally happens, you're just happy to be spending time with a group of good friends while they fight crime as criminals. Maybe you don't like long formulaic shows at all, but this is one you should really give a chance to. It's a fun concept, you believe in the world you're presented with, and the writing is pretty consistent throughout the show. Also, if anyone watching this video knows where I can buy a complete Blu-ray collection of this series, please comment under this video. I tried to find a Blu-ray of Season 1 and this is all Amazon had for me.